Okay, so now we're going to talk about mixing colors with tempera paint. So we're using the squirt bottle tempera, the liquid tempera. You'll use a paint palette, you'll use a sponge, a water basin, and a paintbrush. And I want you to practice mixing different color combinations. So for instance, you can take and mix one color with some white. Now if I take this messy paintbrush and I put it in the white, I ruin the white for any other color I might want to mix with it. So I need to rinse my paintbrush off. I need to dry it off by pulling it across the sponge, and then scoop up some white and mix that around with the red. And if I have just a little bit of white, then it's a darker value, but then I can go back and add more white. And yes, I messed up my white, but I don't think I'm going to use it for something else. So mix and make a lighter value, add more white, and get an even lighter value, and see those gradual value changes, dark to medium to light. And I could keep going, adding more white until it just gets lighter and lighter and lighter. So I want you to try that. You're going to rinse your paintbrush off when you're changing colors, dry it off. Also try what happens when you don't dry off your paintbrush. What happens to the paint? Is the paint dark and thick, or is it runny now that I have water on my paintbrush? And do you like that effect, or you prefer to have it dry? So if you like it thicker and darker, then you need to always be drying your paintbrush off after you rinse it off and change colors. Okay, you can also try adding black to a color. And with black, it's very much like white. If you add a little bit, then this time it's the opposite. So if I add a little bit, instead of it being darker when I added a little bit of white, it's going to be lighter. I paint that, then I can add a little bit more. Make it a little bit darker. I can add a little bit more. Make it even darker. And I can add more. And make it darker still. And keep getting it darker, darker, and darker. Or in this case, when I added more white, it got lighter, lighter, and lighter. Now, you don't just have to mix white or black with a color. You could mix two colors together. So if I take and I mix red and blue together, what color is going to be made when I mix red and blue together? Violet, purple. It's a dark violet. If I add more red to it, what happens? So if I add more red to this violet color that I made, what happens to it? Oh, it gets a little bit redder. I know on the screen it might look a little brown, but it's just another purple, just a redder purple. Okay, I could take red and add it to violet. And what am I going to get when I add that? I didn't rinse my paintbrush off. I need to rinse it off so I can get a clear idea of what I'm doing. So red, a little bit of violet. What color do I get there? Okay, that almost looks, that's much lighter than these two purples. And a lot of red and a little bit of violet. Okay, what if I mix red and green together? So I'll put some red over here in this empty spot, add some green. Okay, it's got a lot of red in it, so I'll add a little bit more green to it, see what happens. Oh, that's brown. So this is kind of a reddish color. It almost looks like something like this because it had such little green, but the more green I add, the browner it gets. So if you mix colors that are opposite of each other on the color wheel, you can get a brown color. And I just added more green, so now it's a greenish brown, but it's still brown. So what you're going to do today is practice mixing different colors on your paint tray. And I got way too much paint. Look at all this paint that's left over. So you don't fill the divots, these circles, don't fill them full. Maybe fill them half full. and that should be enough. And you're just going to practice adding white to a color, adding black to a color, and mixing some colors together, red and blue, or whatever two colors you want to mix together. Maybe mix some opposite colors, colors that are opposite of each other on the color wheel, like red and green or yellow and violet, and see what you can come up with. And then when you're finished, you'll put away your basket with your sponge. You'll pour this out, rinse your paintbrush out, and this will get rinsed under the sink. You'll use a sponge. You can't just run it under the water. You use a sponge to wipe this out clean, like you could almost eat off of it. It needs to be so clean, and then you'll put it in the strainer to dry. And this can go on the drying rack.